And welcome everyone to another edition of On the Bench with Columbus Wired. Dave Seaman here along with Justin Boggs. And since we were with you last, the Blue Jackets have played pretty well, winning 4 of their last 5 games. And Justin, let's briefly talk about that. When we were last with us, it was opening night, coming off a stinker against the Chicago Blackhawks. But then they've really put together some quality wins.
Would have never guessed that after Friday night. All the fans were pretty brutal with this team on Friday. But, yeah, I mean, they've done well. 4 out of 5, you know, considering the strength of schedule this team has had in the first 8 games, being 5-3. You know, you've played the 2 defending Stanley Cup teams. All in all, I think it's been pretty good. I mean, yeah, there's been some disappointing efforts. I think Voracek still looking for his first goal, rather surprising. But overall, you got to look at, you know, how the 3rd and 4th line guys have stepped up. Your Derek Dorsett's, your Derek McKenzie's, Kyle Wilson scoring a goal here this evening. They've done very well.
Well, and just to give a quick recap, since opening night, the Jackets defeating Minnesota 3-2 on the road, came back and defeated Anaheim at home 3-1. Then the stinker a week ago, Friday, 2 back-to-back Fridays that the Jackets did not play well here at Nationwide Arena, losing 6-2 to the Calgary Flames. But then following it up with back-to-back wins, as you mentioned, against the 2 teams that competed for the Stanley Cup last year, a 3-2 come-from-behind win in Chicago Saturday night, and then a 2-1 victory over the Philadelphia Flyers on Monday. And let's talk about the Chicago game, first of all. The Jackets finding themselves down quickly 2-0 in that game, and then just like that, light bulb. Something clicked. Derek Brassard getting a goal late in the second period. Fedor Tutin getting a penalty right against Fedor Tutin, or I should say he was the victim of a penalty. Mm-hmm. A 5-minute power play. The Jackets were able to tie it up and then take the win.
Well, yeah, I think you looked at Brassard goal really sparked it, and then Brewer, you know, charging into Tutin with that penalty. They're getting a 5-minute major, and you know, I cover a lot of college games. There's a lot more major penalties in the college level, and you see it after a few minutes in the power play. You know, 2 minutes, players get worn out. A 5-minute power play, guys get worn out even more, a lot more. So what you noticed was Chicago's compete level went down. Columbus, you know, smelling some blood, going out there and playing a really good, that was their best period of hockey they played all year in the 3rd period, getting those 2 goals to come back and win.
And then, of course, to come back here on Monday night and beat that other team, the defending Eastern Conference champions, the Philadelphia Flyers, 2-1. The Jackets getting the early lead with a goal by Kyle Wilson. That goal coming really off of the efforts of Chris Clark.
Yeah, he goes around the defense, and you know he's used his speed very well in these games here lately, and you know I've been actually rather impressed with him in the last couple games. At first, he seemed like your normal 4th line guy who would come in for 5 minutes and really not give you a whole lot, but seems like he's stepped up his level. As I said, the 3rd and 4th line guys have really bumped it up here in the last 5 games. They've been really impressive.
Of course, Derek Brassard getting his 2nd goal in 2 nights. Derek Brassard and Jake Voracek, although Voracek hasn't scored yet this season, both have really taken advantage of the line changes that Coach Scott Arniel made after the devastating loss to Calgary. Talk a little bit about the line changes.
Well, Filatov mainly is what happened in that one. I mean, Filatov goes down to the 4th line. He's now playing about 6 minutes a game. You know, quite a contrast from when he was playing 15 to 17 minutes a game. So Arniel has said, listen, we're not bumping you down to the minors. We're not, going to make you a healthy scratch. You just have to work your way back up from the 4th line. And what it's allowed them to do is they've, mixed some lines up. We see Umberger playing with Dorsett. That's been a really good pair, those 2. And then we've also seen Voracek, Brassard, and Nash all on one line. We saw tonight a few good chances. Voracek feeding Nash, Nash coming back, feeding Voracek, and then in that power play, the first goal of the evening, it was the second goal of the evening. Nash cross crease feed to Brassard. Really good looking power play there in the game.
And it's been a situation where, the Jackets were embarrassed Friday night. I mean, bottom line, and one thing that we'll talk about here in a minute is the attendance. How the Jackets last week against Anaheim had the worst attended game ever in Nationwide Arena, and they've really responded. Friday night they were competing with high school football. They had 10,000. Monday night against Philadelphia, almost 12,000 here. So, as they always say, winning really does bring fans out, but the effort does too, and the Jackets' effort really has turned a corner here in the last 2 or 3 games.
Well, Friday night, obviously everyone was ready to rip this team. Following Twitter and following what fans are saying on Twitter, media members, everyone seemed to write this team off. But you had to look at it sensibly. They were at that point 3-3, playing a tough schedule. Every team has their off nights. We saw Chicago last year come here and get embarrassed late in the season. What do? They go on and win the Stanley Cup championship. Teams are bound to have their off nights. Columbus, if they are a good team, they will still have their off nights. So it's not time to panic. They're 5-3 right now. It's not the end of the world.
Well, and last year they started on a hot streak as well. And you're at 10 points after 8 games. That's a pretty darn good start. I want to follow up with that attendance thing with one thing. We talk about the attendance. We talk about the low numbers against Anaheim last week. We have Edmonton coming in here on Thursday night. That's the Jackets' next home game. You got to compete with Beggars Night. You have to compete with high school football. Everyone is making such a big deal about the attendance, but the bottom line really is that the Jackets generally don't draw that well at the beginning of the season. And you're competing with Ohio State football. You're competing with other things. It's something that's going to continue to get better.
Yeah, well, I think tonight was a good sign, actually. You're at about 12,000, and you've lost 2,500 season ticket holders. There was a lot of Monday nights last year that were only drawing about 11 to 12,000. So, I think things are okay. There apparently was a good walk-up sale tonight, which really helped matters. If they're only having 77 season ticket holders, they must have had 4,000 walk-ups or, people, buying tickets outside of that. So, as I said earlier in the year, people are just not willing to spend the big dollars to see this team, but there's still an interest there. There's at training camp, people came out and watched this team, and there's obviously a lot of talk about this team. It's just getting them to spend the money to see this team.
Well, and even Scott Arneal said after the Flyers or the win over the Flyers, hey, there may have only been 12,000 people at Nationwide Arena Monday night, but they sure were loud and ruckus.
Yes.
Let's talk quickly a couple other things. Injuries have taken a toll already. Of course, it's noted Mike Commodore with the broken hand or some sort of hand injury. Chris Russell, lower body injury. He should be back in the lineup Thursday. Also should mention Andrew Murray and Ethan Morrow. Of course, he broke his hand earlier in the season. I think it was the Anaheim game. Injuries taken a toll, but like we said, other players really have stepped up.
Yeah, Nick Holden, for example, has been very good in the absence of Commodore, and you've had various injuries to Strawman and Russell. Also, you have to look at Kyle Wilson. Kyle Wilson is essentially in for Ethan Morrow. Look at what he does tonight. He scores a goal. He's in there. He's a grinder. But he's an effective grinder. He's in there getting 12, 13 minutes a game. He's not your ordinary fourth-line guy. He got some power play minutes. He's doing very well in place of Morrow.
So here we are, the Jackets, as of right now, only 3 points behind the Blackhawks for first place in the Central Division. Yeah, we're saying that it's almost the end of October. And the Jackets have some winnable games coming up. You have Edmonton, of course, we mentioned Thursday night. You then have to go to Colorado. You have the Montreal Canadiens coming into town next week. A nice little stretch coming up here for the Jackets.
Oh, sure. Edmonton... I hate to say that's a very winnable game, but, look at...
No letdowns.
No letdown. Well, yeah, Calgary, okay. Calgary, that was supposed to be a very winnable game. You have a rookie goaltender coming in. You
have success against the Flames at Nationwide Arena.
Yeah, and they coming in playing 3 out of 4 nights, and that was supposed to be an easy win. It wasn't, obviously. Edmonton... It's supposed to be another easy win. We'll see what happens, but you have to feel good right now if you're Scott Arneal and the boys in the locker room.
No easy wins for the Columbus Blue Jackets as we wrap things up here. Final thoughts as we basically transition from October into November. We're already almost a month into the season.
It's hard to believe, but everything I think is where I expected it to be. A lot of people predicted this team to be 14th, 15th in the West. I thought they would be a little higher. I thought they would be, right there on the cusp of trying to get a playoff spot. Right now, that's where they are in the standings, and they've shown good effort. Obviously, as I said, a couple players haven't quite stepped up how I've expected, but others who I didn't expect to step up.
Mark Mathot,
been the best defenseman for
Mark
the team.
Mathot.
Yeah, but, and Klesla's played well, too. Klesla blocked a lot of shots in this game tonight. He's done really well.
So that, of course, wraps things up from here. Of course, stay tuned to Columbus Wired and Columbus Wired TV for all the best Blue Jackets coverage right here for Justin. This is Dave. So long, everyone.